Newsweek's David Anson praised it as a pretty damn good summer movie. There, I've said it. It's a breezy, clever entertainment with stirring effects. USA Today's Mike Clark called it a 2-hour aquatic pursuit pick with bruising stunts, fun-to-watch performances, a dozen good chortles, and imposing Panavision renderings of post-apocalyptic crud. And San Francisco Examiner critic Mick LaSalle described this movie as a genuine vaulted greatness that misses the mark, but survives. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of Waterworld.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters.
That's very Deacon-y. You sound kind of like, Dennis Hopper as Deacon.
Greetings, Starfighter. I don't know. He kind of has, yeah. Greetings, Starfighter. Yeah, I don't know. That was not the intention, but.
Oh, well, I mean, I think that any way you would have said it could have potentially led me to respond in the same way. Anyway, everybody, thank you for listening to another episode of Ruined Childhoods.
I think that's only because I put my name in there as Dennis Hopper, so
right,
and the baldness and
for everybody listening, my name is John. That's Dan over there, and we are recording this episode as we do all of our episodes using an online platform that is social distancing friendly, so that he and I can record in both Portland and Seattle with no lag, and we get to choose what our names are on the platform, and we typically do a play on a character name or an actor who's in the movie that we're talking about. And for this episode, Dan came on as Dennis Hopper, and I am John Triplehorn. So I feel like we totally nailed it on this one.
We did, and I'm so glad because I almost went with Jean Triple Dan. And
see, I thought that you might go with some sort of like Jean Triplehorn thing. Her name is just so good.
And I have to shout out the movie Date Night, which I now think of every time I hear the name Jean Triplehorn, because they use her name as like when they're they claim the table that's not theirs, and it's the Triplehorn. Really? Yeah.
Triplehorn. Well, that was just a big, fat waste of time. Thank you for all of your help, and I am being sarcastic. Mother.
I think I only saw the one once, and I was like not into it, so I don't remember it all that well.
I will just briefly, I'm not going to go on a whole Date Night tangent, but I have to say that what I really enjoyed about it when we saw it back in the day was it really reminded me of kind of an early to mid 90s romantic caper comedy.
Well, that's because isn't it just, it's like the Out of Towners,
Similar. Similar.
Steve Martin, Goldie Hawn.
Well, and then prior to that, Jack Lemmon and...
Well, right, but I'm thinking more specifically of like the 90s.
Yes.
You mentioned that very specifically, so...
Oh, yeah, but I mean, not only like that. Like, there were other things. Anyway, I enjoyed Date Night, but... Yeah, they reference Jean Triplehorn. Yeah.
So Dan, before we really launch into Waterworld, and boy oh boy will we, is there anything that you wanted to bring up news-wise, or anything that we didn't talk about for the paper? Which still can't stop thinking about that movie. So good.
No, and there were some things that I want to say that just like came up randomly throughout the week as I was reflecting back upon the paper, but I don't really have anything to add. It was really just, thinking about the movie and how, relevant it is, and, just the night, like the touches. The one thing that I want to just mention again about the paper is how nice how nicely done those, just the little touches, the
it's a very
backgrounds
robust
and-
world. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Appreciate that.
when we talk about these movies or we know what we're going to be doing on the next episode, what I like to do if I have the opportunities is I will watch other things that like for the paper, I watched broadcast news. There was something else. Oh, I watched Spotlight because, as I said in the last episode, they're kind of like spiritual cousin movies, in a weird way. And I, over the past week, have also been watching a few more Ron Howard movies just because it was like, right after that, he did Apollo 13. And I was like, I hadn't seen it in a few years, and I saw that it was on, I think, Showtime or something. So I checked it out, and it's just so good, and it holds up perfectly. It's great. And I also watched Hillbilly Elegy, which had just come out recently, and I figured it'd be a good opportunity to just see like the most recent thing that Ron Howard has put out. And Hillbilly Elegy, I don't know, Dan, if you've seen it, and I'm not going to give anything away. It's one of those movies where it's like the performances are great. The directing is great. I don't think it's it's a strong enough story to warrant everything that it's given. And I don't know if it's particularly well written, but like hair and makeup, and that is where this movie really shines. Like they show like home videos and photos and stuff of like the actual family, and it's like Glenn Close, they got her looking exactly like that woman that she portrays, and Amy Adams also.
I think this is the first time Glenn Close and Ron Howard are reuniting since the paper.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think you're right. And they clearly work great together. So maybe we'll see some more.
Yeah, Ron Howard has just been incredibly prolific, and it's why there are a lot of movies that you really remember that he directed and you associate him with, like The Paper, Parenthood, Splash, other things. But then there are, A Beautiful Mind, which kind of falls in the Apollo 13. One thing I've always appreciated about Ron Howard is that I feel like he's often trying to do something a little different than what he's done.
Yeah.
Before he did,
right.
Look, I mean, Ed TV in the famous, 1998 battle of the person being surveilled by reality television.
Yeah, and sorry, Ed TV, you weren't the better one.
Ed TV from what I remember, was cute.
Sure.
And I remember like Woody Harrelson being really fun in it, as he often is. But
the first wave of, McConaughey,
Harrelson.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I really do appreciate the way that Ron Howard is always trying to do something a little different. I mean, aside from like, the Angels and Demons, Inferno, like all of those Dan Brown things, it's like, may as well just complete the series. But, he does, but he goes from like doing The Paper, which is a very specific kind of movie, to something like Apollo 13, which is extremely different. And,
consider his jump from Willow to Parenthood.
Yeah. Yeah. I do appreciate that about him. He's not just doing movies that are going to be sure successes or like a tried method that he's done 100 times before. He does.
Yeah. And it's like, yes, he is a Hollywood filmmaker. He makes movies, for the mainstream audience, and he's great at it.
Yeah.
And they're not all great, but Ron Howard. And he also just seems like a nice guy. Like, I don't know him.
Absolutely. You never hear any bad stories about Ron Howard.
No, I mean, he's like, I think he's been, I mean, not that this means you're a good person or a bad person, but I think he's been in the same marriage for like since the 70s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, I think like lives in Connecticut, and he just seems like a really, like someone who loves making movies with Tom Hanks.
And he's been doing it since he was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
so I watched a few, Ron Howard movies, and I did the same for not Kevin Reynolds movies, but I watched a few other Kevin Costner movies after watching Waterworld. And I am going to just say this before we move on with Waterworld. Yes, we know it is established that this is an atrocious movie. We are going to speak about it in the most respectful ways we know how, and our opinions are only our own.
Well,
it's a complicated one.
Look, Waterworld falls under that category of movies that had a lot of bad press. We talked about this a lot with Ishtar. So if you want to hear, if you really want to hear this conversation, go into the archives, listen to our Ishtar episode.
Sure. And this movie was referred to often as Fishtar.
Fishtar, right.
Because
Kevin's
it went
Gate.
famously over budget. And, the critics' view of it early on, dictated how the movie performed.
Yeah.
And it ended up making its money in home video sales. And this is what most people focus on, is the pitfalls of this movie.
No, that's it. I mean, we also acknowledge with Ishtar that there was quite a bit of gender politics going on, which is certainly not the case here with two white men being tasking themselves with bringing Waterworld to the screen.
Right. And I'm going to do the synopsis. It's not as long as the last
six
episodes.
of them?
There's not 6 of them. I didn't do one for every character.
John did 6 synopses for the paper if you didn't listen to that one. And so it's quite impressive. It's worth checking out.
So I'll just do this one really quick. And I'm sure there are going to be plenty of things I'm going to miss. But I mean, it's not a complicated story here. It's the year 2500, and the polar ice caps have all melted centuries earlier. All that is left is a vast sea, and the surface is inhabited by a few different types of surviving humans. Some live on atolls, which are floating mini-cities filled with inbred traders. Some are in a vicious group of misfits called the Smokers, who live on board an old oil barge. They are led by Deacon, and they travel in search of wanderers they can pillage. And those wanderers? Some of them are just as cruel and lonely as the Smokers, but they've been driven to madness by their solitude and vitamin D over-efficiency. And then there's our hero, only referred to as the Mariner, who travels on board an intricately rigged trimaran. What makes the Mariner different is that he is evolved and was born with webbed toes and gills, making it possible for him to breathe underwater, giving him the ability to collect treasures from deep below the surface of the ocean. One item that he is able to collect and trade for high-value items like water and fruit-bearing plants is dirt from the Earth's surface. This only fuels the rumor that there exists a place on the planet with actual dry land. When the Mariner attempts to trade his dirt on an atoll, a group of smokers tears the place apart in search of a little girl who lives there, who has a tattoo on her back that many believe is a map to the dry land. The Mariner, who has been imprisoned for refusing to mate with some of their kind, is offered freedom as long as he can help one woman, Helen, and the little girl, Enola, escape. He succeeds and manages to destroy many of the smokers' jet skis in the process. Though the Mariner wants Helen and Enola off his boat ASAP, he's that much of a loner. He grows to actually like them as they travel the seas, dodging the smokers. But when Enola is kidnapped by Deacon, the Mariner insists on rescuing her from the giant oil rig. After they escape, they are found by Old Gregor, a resident of the atoll who operates a flying balloon. They unlock the mystery of the tattoo and find dry land, the peak of Mount Everest. The Mariner decides that this is not the life for him. He is a man of the sea, and he leaves Helen, Enola, and Old Gregor to continue his life of solitude. So the Mariner is played by Kevin Costner. Dennis Hopper plays the Deacon. Jean Triplehorn plays Helen. Tina Majorino plays Enola. People would remember her from Napoleon Dynamite or Veronica Mars. And I think she's pretty great in this. And Michael Jeter is Old Gregor. And I don't know if there's anyone else really notable to mention aside from one of the smokers, one of the pilots played by Jack Black.
That's right, the Jack Black. Also, you might also recognize, especially fans of Sons of Anarchy, would recognize Kim Coates, a character actor he's been around for such a long time that when you see him pop up, now you start to I think I know that. He's the drifter. He's that drifter, that gets on the wrong side of the mariner.
Right. So he is the one, and correct me if I'm wrong, the one that comes on board and essentially is like he trades for the ability to have relations with the ladies. Is that correct?
He wants to with the kid.
Right. Who is?
But
7? 8?
Somewhere around there. But Costner's like, no, you take triple horn. And then that's triple horn. Although what I'm thinking is, I'm like, this guy's been adrift at sea for such a long time. If he sees Gene Triplehorn in any state of undress and there's a breeze, he's gonna, like, it's done.
If he sees a starfish, he's gonna go nuts.
Ooh,
just saying. Anyway, another person worth mentioning, and this goes back to the last episode. I had mentioned that I had a couple of weirdo connections to this movie, and this is one of them. One of the guys who controls the gate at the atoll, is it atoll or atoll? Atoll, yeah. Who controls the gate at the atoll is played by a guy named Tracy Anderson, who has only really been in this and like maybe a couple other tiny nothing roles, and he was my college professor for an acting for camera class that I took. And his like claim to fame was that he was in Waterworld. So that's how you know you've like got the right guy for the job. And he really liked me. He was a very nice guy. I remember him showing us that like Michael Caine like acting video from like the 70s.
Oh yeah. Oh my, I don't blink. This is how I show that I'm strong. So I don't blink. You look in my eyes. I'm not blinking. I stare down the shark.
Like I like how I like how I mentioned the Michael Caine acting video, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, it is.
I mean, I remember.
Famous.
I remember. Yeah, watching that.
We're going to talk for a little while about film acting, of which I've done a little bit. And the first thing that will happen to the audience is, of course, for the rest of the day, they will be completely ignored because you don't exist. My fellow actors and I can regard you as the crew, right?
By the way, the only thing I can say in the Michael Caine accent is Michael Caine. That's it. Michael Caine.
Every movie I do now is with Christopher Nolan. Yeah, actually, you know what? If anyone wants to hear great Michael Caine impersonations, watch any of the Trip movies Steve. I mean, definitely in the first one where they're doing like dueling Michael Caines.
Well, broadsheet journalists have described my impressions as stunningly accurate.
Well, they're wrong. I've not heard your Michael Caine, but I assume it would be something along the lines of, my name's Michael Caine.
That is where you are so wrong. And you can look at my live video for proof, because that's the very thing I don't do. I say that he used to talk like that.
Do you, Michael Caine?
OK. I say, Michael Caine used to talk like this in the 1960s, right? But that has changed. And I say that over the years, Michael's voice has come down several octaves. Let me finish. And all of the cigars and the brandy, don't let me finish, can now be heard.
OK.
I've not fucking finished in the back of the voice and the voice now. Well, I've still not finished. The voice.
You're panicking.
Because you look like you're about to bloody talk. Let me finish. Right, so, Michael Caine's voice now in the Batman movies and in Harry Brown. I can't go fast because Michael Caine talks very, very slowly.
Right, this is how Michael Caine speaks. Michael Caine speaks to his nose like that. He gets very, very specific. It's very like that. When he gets loudly, it gets very loud indeed. It gets very specific. It's not quite nasal enough the way you're doing it, all right? You're not doing it the way he speaks. You're not doing it with the kind of... And you don't do the broken voice, but he gets very emotional. But he gets very emotional indeed. She was only 16 years old
She was only 60. You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
That's Michael Caine.
They're great movies.
Yeah.
You know?
Outstanding.
Yeah,
But,
little buddy travel movies. Yeah, so Waterworld, and of course, this is a very apt movie, a very appropriate movie to talk about now just because of climate change. I don't know if it ever actually establishes what like the cause of the ice caps melting. I can't remember if that was mentioned in like the beginning narration, which by the way, when the Universal logo came up, I saw it and I was instantly just like, wait a second, the water level is going to rise, isn't it? And then they go into the earth and the polar ice caps melt and all the water level rises. And it was just like, I remember that about this. I remember that. And then the very next thing that you see, which is Kevin Costner drinking his own filtered piss. Like those are, that's like the iconic, most memorable thing from this movie, I think, for a lot of people.
Well, yeah, a lot of people took the piss out of Kevin Costner for this movie. Waterworld.
That is one hell of a way to start a movie.
It is. There are a lot of images that are so impactful and memorable. And yes, now, but you have to remember, like, climate change was still happening. It wasn't as big of a thing, but I mean, I'm sure if you asked scientists, climatologists who have been studying since the 90s, they would know, oh yeah, no, this has been...
Well, what I remember about that time, and granted, I was still pretty young at that time, but like I do remember that's when there was a lot of talk about like the ozone layer and like CFCs from aerosol cans and stuff like that.
And
like,
styrofoam packaging.
And that's like what the big talk was around this time.
That was my first foray into activism. Was it really? Yeah, I was very passionate for a while. I even did for WWOR 9, Channel 9 out of Secaucus in New Jersey, did a little like PSA on the Steam Pipe Alley set.
Did you really?
That's right. Some of you know what I'm talking about.
I would try to save the ozone layer. To help it, I would boycott aerosol cans and styrofoam. When products like these are burned, they give off chemicals that damage the ozone layer. If it was completely destroyed, we would have to live underground. I wouldn't like that because there would be no sunshine, trees, or open meadows.
Yeah. And it was because like you had to write, it was this thing in school and I had learned about the ozone, like that the ozone layer was being depleted. And basically that like if we had no ozone layer, the sun would just fry us all. Right. And so I was like, I remember I went on a crusade at school that the cafeteria should stop using styrofoam trays.
Wow. Which, first of all, lets everyone know how old you are. but also, for anybody who's familiar with Degrassi, The Next Generation, you're a total Emma. Just saying.
Emma, really?
Oh, boy.
So
that joke just also gave away your age.
Oh, enough. I don't care. Look, I got more than 5 hours of sleep last night for the first time in a while. So, nice. Yeah, firing on all cylinders. You can't stop me.
Oh, great. Yeah. So also this movie essentially ends, not like ends, but one of the last things that you see, the last thing you see of really the smokers is the oil rig sinking, and it is revealed that it is an Exxon Valdez oil rig, which is like
the Exxon Valdez.
The Exxon Valdez. Yeah, right. But it's not like a big shock because I don't
they
know.
kind of reveal it if you know, and this is where like watching this movie now, if you don't have that knowledge and understanding. So actually that, by the way, is what suggests to me that indeed it was pollution and environmental damage that led to this, because we're referencing the bad guys are tooling around and they worship Captain Joseph Hazelwood, the drunk pilot of the Valdez, or captain. I apologize, but actually I don't apologize. Dude spilled a bunch of oil in the water, so screw him.
That dude sucks.
But yeah, I mean, but that's another thing that's like making Dennis Hopper even more of a villain in this is that he's like worshiping the, like, you know, Almighty Joe.
St. Joe, we're close. After centuries of shame.
Right.
It's Immortan Joe.
Immortan Joe. Well, yeah, and this movie was, you know, kind of came about because the studios wanted to have a new Mad Max. And I mean, honestly, not a bad idea to do it this way.
No. It was originally proposed to Roger Corman. And Roger Corman was like, this is going to cost $5 million. We can't do this.
Yeah, if only.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I think that it's this movie, and we'll get to those a little bit later, but it's like the potential that this movie could have had to be something like truly great. You know, all the pieces are there.
All the pieces are there. I really have to say Costner. I mean, Costner's not the only problem with the movie, but both in terms of what happened behind the scenes and in the editing room, but also on screen, Costner is so first of all, he's throughout about the first hour of this movie, just thoroughly unlikable. And yes, you know, he's going, like, he'll come around and we're going to root for him, but you're not rooting for him. You're not rooting for him the way that you did in Robin Hood, because he's not this inherently good person. But also, this is another Kevin Costner thing that I don't know if this was his thing or what, but this is, I think about Waterworld and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, where he is just so outshined by not just the character of the villain, but the actor playing the villain.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Alan Rickman, forget it.
Alan Rickman in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves is brilliant.
I'm gonna cut your heart out with a spoon!
Why a spoon, cousin? Why not an axe?
Because it's dull, you twit. It'll hurt more.
After I had watched Waterworld, kind of gearing up to talk about it, I watched Tin Cup. And I watched Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and I couldn't get more than 20 minutes into Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Kevin Costner makes it really unwatchable. And the thing is, like, I remember really liking it. Morgan Freeman is great in it. Alan Rickman is great in it. I remember Christian Slater being great in it, but I didn't even get to that part in my rewatch of it recently. But yeah,
it's Costner.
It's Costner. And like, even watching Tin Cup, it's like, you know, Don Johnson is so good as the kind of bad guy. And then you have Rene Russo, who's the like love interest, and Cheech Marin is the, you know, the kind of the buddy. And then there's Kevin Costner, and it's just like, I just don't like this guy. At no point do I like this guy. No, at no point do I feel like Rene Russo should end up with this guy.
No.
And she's Rene Russo. She's amazing.
Yeah, no, she stand on her own just fine.
Absolutely.
But I actually started to think about like the Kevin Costner movies that I do like, and I'm like, how did Kevin Costner not screw these up for me?
Yeah. So JFK, I think he's great in JFK. No question there. It's been forever since I've seen Dances with Wolves, and I have been unable to. It's not on anything streaming that I have, so I can't weigh in on that. Field of Dreams, I haven't seen in a long time, so I really can't weigh in on that, but I remember him being pretty good in that.
He's fine because, you know, his character in that movie is a farmer in Iowa.
Right.
He does not have to be. He's perfect. He is great as just a farmer from Iowa who is hearing voices. And that's great because Kevin Costner he's bland.
He's very bland.
I think that's what JFK does really well.
He's supposed to be kind of just like I don't know. He's not supposed to be an exciting guy.
Well, in JFK though, he's intense and he's passionate. He's also got this team.
I don't mean like I meant more in like the action-y sense. You know, it's not intended for him. You know, he's a passionate guy about this thing that he's focusing on. And I think he plays that really well. Another one that I wanted to watch, but I couldn't track down was Swing Vote, only just because being in the election times that we're in right now, I think it's just a fun one to circle back around to.
I saw that. That was another one, like, he was fine in it because he was just, like, playing
average
this
Joe farmer. Yeah.
Regular guy. Yeah. Yeah. It's these Kevin Costner hero movies. And this one is, I'd have to say that, I mean, I haven't seen The Postman.
Right. Which was like his next movie, maybe?
Yeah. That was 97.
Yeah.
Tom Petty's in that. I never saw it, but I just remember
I
whenever I think about it, I was like,
Tom
Petty's in that.
Yeah.
I kind of want to see
another post-apocalyptic loner movie.
Relevant to today because it's the importance of the postal service. So,
and going back to Waterworld, the things that I think are its strengths, it's a very exciting movie. The action in it is a lot of fun. The like swinging around on the trimaran and doing all the rigging and stuff, it's like that's exciting. And I mean,
well edited.
It's well edited.
Very well edited.
The effects are effective, and I don't know. It just there's a lot about it that's a lot of fun, but I feel like the Costner-y aspect of it really brings it down, and I just know that like it should be taken seriously, but it's kind of taking itself too seriously in the wrong ways. I kind of feel.
Well, it's just and I know like you when you read about it, Kevin Costner was going through a really messy divorce at the time, and that's kind of the excuse number one for his performance, which, I mean, like, all sympathies for that, but that doesn't explain away, like when you're the headliner of a movie and you look like you're just like rolling your eyes through every scene. I was thinking about it. And by the way, it's funny, you were describing when you were talking about how he collects all of his tchotchkes from the deep.
Tchotchkes.
I just started thinking of The Little Mermaid and him like swimming around and picking, look at this stuff. Isn't it neat?
Right. Yeah. No, and I think that stuff it makes a lot of sense. It's fascinating. What's up?
Oh, and the scene when he shows her, when he takes Jean Triplehorn down into the
city.
And there's some logic holes here. Like, he's got these National Geographics that were like underwater for centuries that are in really good, like better conditions than the National Geographics in our parents' basement.
In our parents' basement that had like water damage from a flood.
Like a flood. These have been
literally underwater,
fathoms deep under the sea. But the scene when he's swimming down and he's going to the depths of the ocean, and then you just see the tops of skyscrapers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that was such a haunting.
It's very
vision.
haunting. Yeah, it's really cool. I thought that part was really fascinating. Yeah, like I said. Very effective moments in this movie, but
you know who would have been so much better than Kevin? I mean, other than like pretty much everyone, Patrick Swayze.
Patrick Swayze would have been great.
Like, if I could go back and change something about the making of this film at the time, I would put Patrick Swayze in as the Mariner. He's got much more of that. Like, I feel like his movement, like his body, his movement, he's got that dancer movement where I would believe much more that he has somehow evolved or mutated into he's like 1/8 fish.
Right.
And the rest man.
Yeah. And also
Swayze.
He has 5 million times charisma than Kevin Costner.
Oh, absolutely. But Kevin Costner is just like, am I supposed to believe that he's doing all of these things? Am I supposed to believe that he's so like, and I know I'm not supposed to believe, any of this really because it's a movie, but within that universe, I should believe it. And what I felt like I saw was Kevin Costner doing some like reluctant cosplay while everybody else was trying to make like the biggest movie of the summer.
Yeah. And okay, Dennis Hopper is really going all in on this one. And I think that he embraces the over the topness that this character needs to be, and he does a great job at it. You know, this is Dennis Hopper in the era of like, you know, awesome villains like Speed.
Well, it's 1 year after Speed.
It's 1 year after Speed, and then the, you know, Super Mario Brothers, you know, his role in that. So it's kind of just like this era of just like where he's just such a great bad guy. And also it's like he's funny. This movie's funny. Like the moment when, like, you know, he has just lost his eye and everyone is trying to tell him how good he looks with this like new false eye. And like some guy comes in, he's like, looks like crap. He's like, I knew it.
It's the kid. It's the teenager.
Yeah.
Well,
Looks good. I like it.
nice.
Yeah, I like it better than you realize.
Much better.
What do you say, Toby? The truth.
Looks like shit.
That's why I love children, no guile.
Yeah.
He's like, kids don't give a shit. They'll tell you the truth.
Yeah, it's so funny. And Jean Triplehorn is great in this. I thought so.
She's very well cast because she has that, you know, slightly exotic, atypical look where even though she's not, and the background of her character is really not there. There's no,
you don't learn much. Yeah.
No. And I mean, she's Enola's caretaker.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. So not much about her backstory, but, and it would be really interesting to know more about her backstory.
Oh,
but
absolutely. Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Not that that's where I'm going later, but
yeah. And, you know, Tina Majorino, as, you know, Enola, the little kid. And I got to say, you know, Enola is alone spelt backwards. And it's something that you kind of just, you can't overlook it. It's not a very well hidden, you know, thing, but it makes me think of this time when I was in high school and I actually had to confirm with a friend of mine that this actually happened and wasn't my imagination or like my, you know, a dream I had that's somehow convinced itself that it's a real memory. But at one point, maybe junior or senior in high school, I had like an English class and had to like write some sort of short story with my friend Jen Brown, Box Brown's sister. And I think that also it was with our friend Rose, and we wrote this story about a character named Nelly Zalaznog, which is Elian Gonzalez spelled backwards, which is...
I remember this. I remember hearing something about this.
Oh, really? Which is just like, that'll give you, hey, now that tells you everything exactly how old I am. When it's like, all that was in the news was Elian Gonzalez.
So 2000?
Right. Yeah, exactly. 99, 2000, right around there. Yeah. So anyway, I just couldn't stop thinking about that with the name Enola and the whole theme of being kind of lost at sea. You know, just kind of cracked me up.
No kid. Wow. Okay. I didn't make that connection. I mean,
I was thinking about it much longer than you were for 10 seconds that we've been talking about it.
Yeah, we did have back in the days of cubicle sketch comedy, we did have a sketch that referenced Elian Gonzalez.
What a weird way to mark an era.
Well, it was also, I'll go on a brief side note, a brief tangent about the sketch because I don't know, I thought it was pretty clever. But the actual, it's kind of a part two to a sketch. The part one is the premise of the sketch is that a grown-up baby Jessica is going to work at this office, and one of the other people working at the office had fallen into a well like a week after her, but no one cared.
Yeah.
And there's this whole bitter fight. And there's also a lot of Dirty Dancing references because it ends with like one of the temps coming in and says, nobody puts baby Jessica in a corner. And there's references throughout. But then at the end, it's when we come back to that sketch later, it's the new employee coming in to work, and we're introducing him to the employee that had the fight with baby Jessica. And I'm like, okay, so Michael, this is Mr. Gonzalez. He's going to be working with you. And he goes, oh, you mean like Elian Gonzalez? And he's just like,
yeah.
Right.
End of
scene.
Yeah. So anyway, and then of course we have Michael Jeter, our beloved Michael Jeter, in a role that's less fun, that we're less fond of than his role in Fisher King. But he makes sense. He works as old Gregor.
Yeah, he's not really he's like doing a lot more heavy lifting as an actor in Fisher King. Yeah. But in this, he has like his accent, whatever accent he's doing. Right. And, he's kind of the, kooky, eccentric old wizard. He's not really a wizard, but
like engineer, whatever.
He builds like a little helicopter.
Yeah.
Or hot air balloon. Not a helicopter.
But it's like a hybrid situation. It's bizarre. But,
it's a thing.
Yeah. But it's fun. I don't know. The movie itself, I think I didn't hate watching it. I at no point was like, I got to turn this off the way I did with like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. And I think that a lot of that might have to do with the fact that like Kevin Costner doesn't really talk all that much. It's like everyone else does the majority of the talking. Costner just kind of like kicks back. It's like I remember back in that time about like the way people would talk about Kevin Costner, and it's just like I don't understand it. I just really don't understand it.
I remember that a friend of Meryl Rubin.
Okay.
Friend of the family, mother of Jeff Rubin.
Previous guest Jeff Rubin's mother.
On The Wizard. I remember it was Kevin Costner and Mel Gibson.
Oh, jeez.
You would go over their house and she had like refrigerator magnets. It was like Mel Gibson. I think there was like a poster of like Cocktail with Tom Cruise. And I think she also liked Kevin Costner as well.
That's so funny. I actually do have a vague memory from her, a mention of like Kevin Costner's like bare butt in like Robin Hood.
Yes.
Wow. How is that a memory?
You know what? She makes an impact. So
she certainly does. She's quite a lady.
Yeah. So, but it wasn't even his butt in Robin Hood.
Maybe
Pretty
it's
sure he had a butt double.
Maybe they went to the same butt double union for Gene Triplehorn.
For Gene Triplehorn, maybe it was the same butt double. No, actually, it was much paler in his.
Why do I also remember the fact that his butt was very pale in that movie?
Because it was the most believable. It was the most believable aspect of that movie that a guy who lived in the woods in like England would have a pale ass.
Well, and then this is also something that you're making me think about. At the beginning of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, he's in prison. He's got this like long beard and this like long greasy hair, and it's like I don't think anybody in Waterworld like has a beard. What are they all shaving with?
So, and I had a lot of those similar type of questions. Now, if they're the smokers, chances are that on the Valdez, there's all sorts of personal effects. Like they have so much.
The smokers
people would be out on
right
for months. But yeah, and then I guess Kevin Costner doesn't have a beard because he's part fish.
But he's got stubble.
Why doesn't Kim Coates, the drifter, who has been out at sea for ages, why does he have a perfectly clean-shaven face?
Yeah. So anyway, those are the things where I'm just like, why do they not all have like crazy long beards?
Yeah. No, there's a lot of little logic holes.
Of course. Yeah.
The thing with the any of the things that he goes to the bottom of the sea and gets, it's like they've been there for a week.
Right.
They look about like that level of water damaged, if that. But despite the fact that they've also been under like the deep pressure of the ocean, though.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so, yeah.
No one's getting the bends. Yeah.
Well, no one's getting the bends, but also like, wouldn't that pressure of the ocean have kind of buckled the architecture of.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not.
I
don't know science.
I feel like if there was just a line from Gene Triplehorn or even like Enola, like the naive child, to just be like, how come you don't have a beard, like a big long beard? And like all he has to say is like, it's too long to explain. That's all you need. Yeah.
It's
like
another story for another time.
Well, the thing is like kids are, they ask a lot of questions. I feel like if she asked a ton of those, like just like a list of all like, it's like, how come this? How come that? How come that? And all he has to say is just like, take too long to explain. Don't worry about it. And then it's just like telling the audience, like, well, let's just look past all that stuff. We got a movie to tell. Yeah.
Not important right now. We're in the lull between action sequences.
Yeah. There's no time to explain. The smokers are coming.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, is that the smokers again? Yep,
oh,
go.
Hey, I think I hear a smoker. And speaking of the smokers, I really want to shout out, and I don't know if I have the actor's name. Oh, William Preston is the actor, but the guy who's just in the giant like oil vat on the tanker, who's just there to like keep like to report on the levels of the oil. And when spoiler alert, when a match gets thrown down, or is it a match or is it a lit cigarette?
Oh, it's the flare.
It's a flare, right.
Yeah.
And like this, as soon as like the flames start to come, he's like, oh, thank God.
And it's funny because he drops it down there and you're like, you feel he's like the one person on this ship that you feel any sympathy for is this old guy. And I remember when he was dropping that, I was like, oh man, but he's got to kill the old guy. And then when the old guy was just like, oh, thank God.
I know. Oh, he was in the Fisher King.
I was going to say, I recognized him from somewhere.
He was one of the
he's one of the other,
guys.
In the beginning.
Yeah.
But I feel like I've seen him in other
He's
things.
He's been in a couple dozen things, probably. Exorcist 3, which we've talked about a bunch, or you've talked about a bunch. Reckless, Joe's Apartment, The Crucible, I'm Not Rappaport, Illuminata. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But he's so good in this. He's so good in this.
There are a lot of the smokers. There are a lot of the smokers. There's that one guy, he's got the dark hair. I think he's the one who does the surgery on the eye.
Oh, uh-huh.
And he's just kind of this like very dry, very like, uh-huh, yeah. And it was very amusing, and there's so many great things.
There's also
with
a really
Dennis
funny,
Hopper.
There's a funny moment also when, when the mariner shows up at the atoll and they're just like, oh, we'd love it if you would mate with one of our people. And it's like, it's getting a little, keeping the bloodlines going is getting a little weird, and like you just see like the one guy who like looks all weird looking. Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately it's the movie, and I guess one of the questions I was left with at the end, and I was thinking about this, and I was also thinking about The Day After Tomorrow, which came out 10 years after this and is also about climate change at a very accelerated rate. But I wonder how a movie like that, like it must have been easier to make just like a sci-fi action movie about that 25 years ago versus now. I feel like you'd have to, if you're going to make a film about like the effects of climate change or global warming, it would need to be more serious. I'm not saying it couldn't be a sci-fi movie, but it would have to, I would imagine it more being like Interstellar is a sci-fi movie, is a serious sci-fi movie about the effects of climate change.
Right.
Could you still make a, action blockbuster that the concept is?
I'm trying to remember if Geostorm touched on climate change too much. I can't really remember.
Did it? I didn't see Geostorm.
I watched it, on HBO or something, and I remember a ton about it, right? No, but I feel like that's one at that level, like the Roland Emmerich crazy, big, over the top, like,
But I mean, it didn't. I guess, like, how do you get a movie like that made, and also, like, how do you get people to go see it? And not be sitting there thinking like, oh, God, climate change is really serious.
Well, what you could do is you could bring back Waterworld. And you can just kind of, because there was the, 1995 Waterworld, it gives you the ability to make that kind of movie now. Because it is so famous for there to be this already existing property.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but I do think, and I think this might just be a segue into us deciding the fate of Waterworld here.
Well, I just want to acknowledge the things that have come up post 1995 movie Waterworld. You know, there have been a couple of like video games. There was a Virtual Boy game and then an SNES game that never actually came out in the United States. And I played it using an emulator because I was just so curious. And I listened to a fantastic episode of the podcast, How Did This Get Played? With Heather Ann Campbell and Nick Weiger, which is all about these like weird or bad video games. And Heather Ann Campbell is actually a pretty big Waterworld enthusiast. She is like obsessed with it. And I actually tried to get her to be a guest on this episode, but she's taken the rest of the year off from doing any recording, unfortunately. But she's like, if you're going to do it at another time, let me know. But it's like, we're doing this whole episode 1995 thing. So, but I asked her if there's anything she wanted to mention or me to mention on her behalf for this. And she's like, only that this movie's way too real. You know, it's like, it's exactly everything that we should be thinking about. So, yeah. But and it also needs to be mentioned that still, well, I don't know what the state is of people going to the Universal Studios theme parks, but there is the Waterworld stunt show. And Dan, this is my other weirdo connection to Waterworld. I was a producer. I produced story for a few episodes of the last season. No, not the last season because it's come back, but the show Trading Spaces in like the 8th season, I think. And we did an episode where there is a stuntman and his apprentice, and they are trading spaces, and they both work on the Waterworld stunt show. So I was there filming at one of the stunt performances to get, some footage of them. And yeah, and gotta say, it's a great stunt show, and it makes perfect sense for there to be a stunt show about this movie because the theatrics of the action are really, really fun.
Oh, there were sequences that looked like a stunt show, not in a bad way.
Right. No, so much fun, and totally works for the stunt show. I believe that one of the stuntmen, the older stuntman, was also the Indiana Jones stunt show guy. So anyway, but
very versatile.
Yeah, right. So different. But those are a couple of the things that did keep the property alive. And of course, there were action figures and all sorts of stuff like that. So anyway, but yeah, Dan,
there was going to be a sci-fi series. I want to say in like 2012.
Oh, really?
There was some chat about a Sci-Fi Network like series, and there's also, and I don't know where to find this. Maybe it's on the Arrow Blu-ray release, but the Ulysses cut.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say the Ulysses cut. A fan-made recut of the movie that they eventually went back and actually did this cut of it. I'd love to see it because I hear it's really good.
And apparently it explains a lot more.
Right. Yeah.
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 And maybe, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, a lot of this movie even couldn't be shot the way they intended it just because of weather conditions that wiped out entire sets that they had to rebuild or decide, screw it, we're just gonna not do this one. But yeah, I would love to see this Ulysses cut.
I would be interested to see that, and then that could potentially make its way into the form of a remake.
Yeah. Well, Dan, what exactly would you want to do?
I think I would go for a remake.
I agree. Yeah.
I would like a remake, and while I certainly have a few names floating around in terms of stars and filmmakers, I instantly thought, as I was thinking about how Kevin Costner just didn't fit this role for me, and I was like, who today would fit that? Dave Bautista.
Oh, yeah.
Dave Bautista as, and like, yes, I know, Drax is kind of this like, he's an alien. He's not a mutated human, but I think that Dave Bautista could potentially bring the kind of action of the role of like that character of Drax, but also bring to it some of that emotion, some of that pathos that he showed in Blade Runner 2049. 2049.
Yeah.
Yes.
Going back to something that you mentioned earlier, though, because you had talked about how Patrick Swayze would have made a lot of sense because he has kind of this, like, I don't know, a very specific physique where, like, you buy him as a dancer as much as you buy him as, his character in Roadhouse, or you buy him as whatever else. I don't know. Does Dave Bautista also have that physique that would really work for you?
I mean, I haven't seen him in a wrestling ring in a while, but like because that's how I first got to know Dave Bautista was as WWE's Batista. And he was always one of my favorites because he was this guy who he was big, he was imposing, but man, he could move and he could keep going. So, and it's been at least 10 years since I've seen him in a match like that. But, it's also movies. And, when we're comparing movies to pro wrestling is the real one there. Because like I have sat in a building and watched Dave Bautista actually do these things. And I think he would be good. The other, but also to your point on that, I think Mahershala Ali would be more, would fit more. Like I was between the two because I was like Batista, I would get excited. I was watching Waterworld and I was just like, man, if it was Dave Bautista, I'd be into this a lot more. But in terms of the character and really fitting that, I mean, unless you just went with, was it Doug Jones, The Shape of Water? Which I'm like, same universe? No. But I think Mahershala Ali could bring that to it. And I mean, he's, I don't know, what type of physical shape he's in, but he's doing a comic book movie. He's in one of the.
Oh yeah, I think I
forget
hearing about that. So
but, yeah. Oh, and I want to give you my Helen because Helen is the character that I only have one actor written down for, and I wrote nobody else, and that would be Zoe Kravitz.
Zoe Kravitz keeping it in with the kind of Mad Maxy theme since she was in Fury Road. I totally agree with Zoe Kravitz. She's awesome. I know I've talked about it before. She's so good in the High Fidelity series, which really gives her more of an opportunity, even more than like Big Little Lies, to like really show what she can do. And I think that she's absolutely fantastic. So I love that. I agree. I would totally want to redo it for a lot of reasons. This movie was extremely famously expensive, and now you could do this so cheap. And honestly,
shoot it on an iPhone.
Well, I mean, maybe. But like, I know that when it comes to like shooting out on the open water, like you can't beat the look of that, but you can come pretty damn close. And if it means saving a ton of money or like, having that money used for better purposes, and
not having a storm destroy your entire
exactly set. That's so many millions of dollars.
Well, that wasted. Spielberg told Kevin Reynolds, don't shoot on the open water. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, it's like right now, nobody would be able to tell that it wasn't shot on open water if you did it, with CGI. As far as Kevin Costner replacements, I mean, I like the Mahershala Ali. I don't know if I would like the Dave Bautista idea as much, but you come to it from a different perspective as somebody who has more of a history with him with the pro wrestling.
And I want to add, I also feel, sorry, I had another justification, and just to throw it in, all the swimming.
A lot of upper body. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
And also for that reason, I feel like, you were talking about Patrick Swayze, and I feel like somebody who encapsulates a lot of that stuff that Patrick Swayze had is like Chris Hemsworth, who I think you can totally buy him as like the complete loner who doesn't want to have anything to do with anybody, but then who comes around to like really forming a bond with these people. You don't seem to love that one.
Well, because then you're essentially having Thor play Aquaman.
It's not a superhero, though.
No, yeah. I know. Well,
but that's the thing is, like, I wouldn't want Jason Momoa to play, the Mariner. I could see him being. Not. I could see him being a smoker, maybe Deacon, but like
maybe Deacon, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I like Chris Hemsworth, and I generally feel like something like this, he would do it fine. He would do it better than Kevin Costner.
Yeah, I mean, also it's just like, I feel like when you're thinking about somebody who's always swimming like super far underwater, there's a certain grace to it. And I feel like somebody like him would have that swimmer's feel. Where I don't see that as much in Dave Bautista.
No, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So, and of course there are probably dozens of other incredible actors who could do such a good job. I wouldn't think I don't think that this one would be as good if it were gender flipped. I just don't and that's just me personally, I just don't see it working as well. I think that having the male-female dynamic between the Mariner and then Helen and Enola works better this way.
I mean, I thought about it, but yeah, I agree. It just didn't click for me when I was trying to think of, and not necessarily gender flipping, like keeping Helen as a woman, but making the Mariner a woman too.
Yeah, because it's not like, well, they do have a romantic interest that develops between them, but like that's a completely it's a very 90s thing to be doing that.
You can still have
but you don't have to do it that way.
No, you don't. You absolutely don't. But it's kind of like, I don't know. I was thinking about it, and then it's like Charlize Theron has kind of done that type of role. Like I feel like Furiosa in Mad Max is kind of, she's that kind of crusader. Actually, she's more of a good person in that.
Right. Well, if we were talking about women to do this, I think that I like, and I feel like both of these people have been in Mission Impossible movies, but Léa Seydoux, I think would be really awesome. And, is it Rebecca Ferguson? Yeah, Rebecca Ferguson, who is in the last two Mission Impossible movies. I think she'd be awesome. Actually, was she the one who even does the underwater stuff in?
I think so.
Yeah, whichever Mission Impossible.
I forget which one. Was that Fallout?
I don't think that was Fallout. I think it was the one
Rogue
before.
Nation.
Rogue Nation, I think. Yeah. So anyway, for what it's worth.
Yeah. They would be good. Now, who would you cast as Deacon?
Oh, yeah, but the thing is, like, I wouldn't want it to be a Dennis Hopper, carbon copy.
No, but it's funny because when I was thinking of it, and of course, like a bunch of names popped into my head at first, and then I was looking at some trivia for Waterworld and saw that at least two of the names that I thought of for a remake had been considered originally.
Oh, really?
And that was Samuel L. Jackson, who I don't think can play roles that require eye patches anymore.
Yeah, no, he's done.
And who's Gary Oldman?
Oh, mm-hmm.
Who? Yeah, in 1995. Yeah, and it would have been, yeah. I was kind of thinking about that, like who would be good. And that's a role that you could gender flip, and I think depending on who you cast could work. Like, I don't know, like a Natasha Lyonne Deacon.
Oh, that'd be really interesting. I don't know if I would necessarily like that for more than a few minutes, but
I don't know. I'm trying I'm trying to think. I mean, of course, because my mind went to Sam Rockwell as just kind of
Sam Rockwell
who
would be
would
great.
pick up the mantle.
I feel like Sam Rockwell would be a good old Gregor. Because he's just kind of like unhinged and weird, and I think they'd be so good with that.
Well, that works. I think
a good Deacon. I mean, I don't know. Donald
what about
Glover.
Woody Harrelson?
Woody Harrelson, yes, but
Woody Harrelson would be more of like Dennis Hopper. What about Ron Perlman?
Oh, Ron Perlman would be fun.
I like Ron Perlman, and I would like to see him get that one more like big screen role. Like he was so great as Hellboy.
You know, I didn't see it, but I know it just got like panned.
Well, no, that was the new.
Oh,
Hellboy.
no, that was the newer one. You're right.
Yeah, he was in the Guillermo, which Hellboy 2, The Golden Army is phenomenal.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
And he also, like Ron Perlman on Sons of Anarchy, again, was wonderful. But I also like the idea, like you mentioned, Donald Glover.
Yeah.
Who I would like to see doing something like in that vein, like more of a villainy.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's like because he was this way in Black Panther, I don't think that Michael B. Jordan would be necessarily a good candidate for it.
Yeah.
I did love his energy as kind of the villain, but I just don't know.
They're also a little. I feel like I want to go a little bit older. For a character like Deacon. Like, what about? I don't know. I'm trying to think of someone
David
like
Thewlis.
Oh, I love David Thewlis. David Thewlis could do pretty much anything.
He could be any
concerned.
of these characters. Yeah.
Yeah, David Thewlis would be fun. Who else? I'm trying to think who else is an
Or like
older...
while we're talking like in the Fargo verse here, you know, it makes me even think of like, I don't know, Chris Rock. You know, Chris Rock is very, very much active. He's definitely in that age range now where he could be this kind of like, and you know that he has the ability to get kind of crazy and get weird.
Yeah, that would be interesting. That would be interesting. A Chris Rock. I mean, I also just finished season 4 of Fargo not too long ago.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Another
we don't
time.
need to talk about that right now. But just like, I'm rarely up to speed on these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, Chris Rock. I mean, like, yeah, it was funny because I first thought like, oh man, I would love to see Samuel L. Jackson, and then it's well, I'm afraid, you know, I think we have to kind of retire his jersey on this type of thing.
I don't know. I mean, I'd love to see his name come up again when we're talking about doing something that like maybe he hasn't done in a while or that he's not like known for as much, because clearly the guy is amazing and should be in everything, but doesn't need to be in our imaginary versions of these things necessarily all the time.
No.
And also he played in the Kingsman series. Well, in the first one, he's the villain and does a real fun job with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I can't think of too many other people who would be a good Albert Brooks. He's a little too old now. Albert Brooks. I mean, I loved him in Drive. You know, I loved seeing that side of him in Drive. Yeah. That's what I was thinking of. That would almost make him a fun Deacon. But I don't know. There was something about Dennis Hopper that really worked with that whole post-apocalyptic.
I know. Or you could do like a Bryan Cranston. That always works.
Oh, yes. Yes. I think that's the one I like is Bryan Cranston. Mm-hmm. I think that's where I'm landing on this one. Or Tilda Swinton.
Ooh.
Because there's another one, or like, and then it's like you go, well, Tilda Swinton, Willem Dafoe, any of these people could. I mean, of course, Willem Dafoe could.
Yeah.
Do this. Willem Dafoe could play all the roles.
He and David Thewlis, cast of 2.
I mean, I was funny because I was thinking about like he's kind of got a fish quality. I was like, oh yes, he was in Aquaman.
Oh, well, you know,
of course he was.
Screw it, get Jack Black back in there.
Oh, as Deacon. Oh, yes. Oh, that is a good idea. Now, in terms of filmmakers, did you have anyone in mind?
No. This is one of those where it's less about the person making it than it is about. I don't know. I think that also just like I don't have the names in my head right now for, there's the very obvious ones, the people who are doing things like this right now. And I think that just with this one, as long as it's somebody even remotely capable.
Oh, I would like to see Duncan Jones.
Oh, well, okay. See, now we're getting...
I would like to see a Duncan Jones Waterworld.
With the Sam Rockwell reunion.
Oh, yeah.
Moon. I mean, I think that would be interesting. Didn't he do a like World of Warcraft movie?
Oh, he did. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see that. I think that he's fantastic. I'd be curious. That would be fun.
Yeah, I mean, there weren't, like the other directors that came to mind were the usuals. Catherine Bigelow, who has been on my mind lately. So, but I was trying to think of like who's, because I was like, Catherine Bigelow, yeah, Strange Days, 1995, is an awesome movie. But I wanted to like, who is the 1995 Catherine Bigelow today?
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
And I don't know who that is. I just don't know enough to be able to say that. But
right.
I wouldn't want to just go to the old standbys.
Right.
For this very special hypothetical remake of Waterworld.
Well, our dear listeners, let us know what you think. If you have any director suggestions, you can email us ruinedchildhoodspod@gmail.com. We're on Instagram @ruinedchildhoodspod, Twitter @ruined_pod. Find our merch on tpublic.com. Just search for Ruined Childhoods and all of our stuff will pop up. Dan, anything else you wanted to mention about Waterworld, or should we move on to what we're going to talk about on our next episode?
No, nothing else to say other than that if you're listening and you haven't seen Waterworld and have kind of always been reluctant based on the word of mouth, I would say give it a fair shot. It's not going.
Speaking of giving it a fair shot, maybe have a drink with it. Make it a drinking game.
Make it a drinking game, sure. Every time Kevin Costner emotes, drink. You won't get a buzz, but like you're whatever. If you have a cold drink, it will be warm by the time you drink.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, enjoy Waterworld. There is certainly value to it, and besides, a lot of people worked really hard to make that movie and deal with like Kevin Costner throwing tantrums and shit like that. So
if you know
anyone who's
Oh no, you go ahead.
No, just if you know anyone who worked on Waterworld, give them a hug or something when you can.
Buy
it's
him
not
a drink.
safe right now.
One more thing I wanted to mention, going back a little bit to the Super Nintendo Waterworld game. It has, and I'm not even kidding, phenomenal music.
Thank you. You just reminded me of a question I had for you about the music in Waterworld.
Okay, but quick, I think the guy's name is like Dean Evans or something, who did the music for the, let's see, Dean Evans Waterworld game. Is that his name? Dean Evans. Yeah, it's so good. Definitely look it up. I think that you can find the stuff on YouTube. All right, you had a question for me.
I did. Sorry, I have to go back here. Now, the music to Waterworld, the movie, is composed by James Newton Howard. But I was during one scene, the scene when he's trying to get away from the smokers and he releases that parachute.
Oh yeah,
sail. The music reminded me of Hook.
Huh.
And I don't know if it... All right, the music sounded familiar, and it was like... Da, 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 da. It was something like that. And I was sitting there listening, I was like, where do I know that music from?
Huh.
And it sounded like Hook.
I have to go back and check it out now.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. If you also please email us if you can confirm if you can confirm that for me, please.
Yeah. So Dan,
I need to know.
Let's tell everybody what we're going to talk about on our very different next episode of the podcast.
Yes, on our next episode, we are going back to dry land to meet up with Bet, Goldie, and Diane. It's the First Wives Club.
You bet your ass it is. I am so excited.
1996, yeah.
Yeah, so
get into
this is episode 95 right now. We talked about a 1995 movie. Next episode is 1996 movie. It's the 96th episode. We're going to put something on our Instagram where you can help us choose what our 100th episode is going to be. We have 4 options, but we are definitely open to other suggestions. No theme necessary.
You get to decide our fate.
Well, Dan, on your way to dry land, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.
Completely destroyed. Completely destroyed. I would boycott aerosol cans and styrofoam. Completely destroyed. There would be no sunshine, trees, or open meadow. Completely destroyed. If it was completely destroyed, we would have to live underground.